Thank you so much, Ray, for joining us. We will go ahead and get started, everyone. Today we have Ray McGovern. Ray came to Washington from his native Bronx in the early 60s as an Army infantry intelligence officer, and then served as a CIA analyst for 27 years, from the administration of John F. Kennedy to that of George H.W. Bush. Ray's duties included chairing national intelligence estimates and preparing the president's daily brief, which he briefed one-on-one to President Ronald Reagan's 5 most senior national security advisors from 1981 to 1985. In January 2003, Ray co-created Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity to expose how intelligence was being falsified to justify war on Iraq. As an act of conscience, on March 2nd, 2006, Ray returned the Intelligence Commendation Medallion given to him at retirement for especially meritorious service, explaining, "I do not want to be associated, however remotely, with an agency engaged in torture." He returned the medallion to Representative Peter Hoekstra, then chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Ray has appeared on the NewsHour, C-SPAN's Washington Journal, CNN, BBC, a number of domestic Russian TV channels, Al Jazeera, RT, Press TV, CCTV, and many other TV and radio programs and documentaries. Thank you so much, Ray, for joining us today. It's an absolute honor to have you with us.
Well, you're most welcome, and I'm really eager to entertain your questions and to compare notes with the younger generation.
Well, I wanted to, for you to, talk about your time as a CIA officer, and with what you're currently witnessing right now. Who would you say is calling the shots in the United States of America?
Well, it seems to me that Donald Trump is calling the shots. And he is completely unpredictable, and that's why he's such a danger to the world. My shtick was watching Soviet foreign policy, and with Mr. Putin looking on, he can't be sure of anything with respect to Mr. Trump, and so he has to treat him with kid gloves. So how did this decision to attack Iran happen? Well, we know how it happened. The Secretary of State, who is also the National Security Advisor, Rubio, told us 2 days after the attack, I should say, that, it happened this way. The Israelis told us that they were going to attack Iran. And we thought, oh my God, the Iranians might retaliate against us. They probably would. And so we wanted to preempt that and make sure that the damage that the Iranians did in attacking us would be limited, so that when they retaliated, we wouldn't suffer such great casualties. So hello, that means Israel made us do it. No, it was pre-planned, I'm sure, but here's Rubio without any compunction or any embarrassment saying, Israel led the way. They let us do it, and we know that Iran would retaliate against us, so we joined the fray. So Israel has incredible influence on our decisions, and we know how this went down when the head of Israeli intelligence, Barnea is his name, came to the White House Situation Room on the screen and briefed Trump and Netanyahu and said, look, this is going to be a piece of cake. We'll kill the top echelon of leaders, including the supreme leader. We know where he lives. We know that he'll probably be right there. And then we'll kill a lot of other people. And then the Iranian people will just rise up and throw off the...
Against... Mm-hmm.
Well, it was all poppycock. And am I thinking that Trump believed that? Well, he had advisors there. He had Rubio, Hegseth, he had J.D. Vance. So what did they say? Nothing. They said nothing. If the Israelis want you to do it, and you think it's going to work, they said nothing until the next day. The next day, they told a New York Times reporter, "Well, we wondered about this idea. We had our reservations, and so we all thought, well, maybe not. Yeah, right. The next day, huh? So you have a Trump that doesn't tolerate opposition to any of his views, and a Netanyahu who Well, let me put it this way. The Iranian foreign minister 2 days ago said, look, Mr. Trump, are you going to put a muzzle on your pet? Are you going to make sure that this pet of yours named Israel is going to cooperate with this new peace strategy, or are you not? If you're not, no deal. If you are, maybe we can open the Strait of Hormuz, which you so clearly wish us to do. So it all depends on how much leverage Trump has in the first place, and how much he's allowed to use to make sure that the Israelis stop what they're doing in Lebanon and stop what they're doing elsewhere, so that this fledgling agreement can succeed. That's a tall order. I don't know how it's going to come out. Netanyahu doesn't know how it's going to. I don't think Trump knows exactly what he's going to decide to do, but his big motive here, his need is to open the Strait of Hormuz, or else the world economy goes into depression, not recession, nothing more. It goes into depression, and who will they blame that on? Well, of course, the person who
Donald Trump. Now, has in your time where you have also, been in, these situations, have you ever seen, like with Iraq, for example, or any other, times, have you ever seen where Israel did come in and try to influence us going into other wars as well for, for them, or for whatever reason that they seemed would be beneficial for them, not for us?
Well, guys, Iraq is a good example. Um, I didn't think, with all my experience, that despite all the drumming for war, that we would start a war of aggression. That's what it was. That's what it is, a war of aggression, defined by Nuremberg as the supreme international crime, differing from other war crimes only in as much as it contains the evil core of the whole. All other evils that come from a war of aggression, think torture, think all this stuff, it came from this war of aggression. So I didn't think, I thought Bush and Cheney were, and then toward the end, it seemed that they were very serious. And so it happened. Now, what was the role of intelligence in that? Well, that's when I went public with my disagreement with my former colleagues, who let themselves be used, let themselves be shaped into saying that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, and this is important, that Saddam Hussein had operational ties with Al Qaeda. Why was that important? Well, because of 9/11. In other words, when they went into Iraq, 70% of the American people believed that Saddam Hussein had something to do, through his operational ties with Al Qaeda, with 9/11. Okay, so anyhow, I tried to piece together why they did that, and I came up with an acronym, OIL. Okay, now Jon Stewart made great fun of that. He says, McGovern, you can't use, that violates the rules for acronyms. You can't have the O mean oil like you do. L mean logistics, the military bases that we coveted in northern Iraq. And the I, of course, was Israel. Whoa, Israel. Yeah. Well, long story short, in the months and years since, it became very clear to me that about 70% of the motivation for Iraq, for the strike on Iraq, for the war of aggression on Iraq, was the Israelis that were crawling all over the Pentagon, had a special pipeline into Vice President Cheney, and he to the president. They thought it was going to be a cakewalk. Well, it wasn't. And now they thought it would be another cakewalk. Well, it wasn't. And under whose influence did they think it was going to be a cakewalk? Pure and simple, very clear with respect to
It was
Israel.
Israel. So Israel comes in, says this is going to be an easy walk in the park, a cakewalk. You're going to go in, we're going to take them out, and then it's just going to be a day or two, 1 week maximum, and we're leaving. Is that why we kept hearing Donald Trump say that it's just going to be, a one more week from now, and we won this, guys. Within the first week or few days, we won. And then 2 months later, we won again. And then 4 months later, we won again. And there was no proof to show of that. So basically, Israel comes in, tells America, hey, this is going to be so easy. And then in the end, we fail. The United States of America takes a major failure and a major L. And then Israel gains their objective into ruining and strengthening themselves while the United States is weakened.
Yeah, but the piper is going to be paid now. Israel has some really difficult choices to make, and so does Trump. That memorandum of misunderstanding is what I call it. The memorandum.
Yep, that's a good way to call it.
Yeah, Israel has to fulfill its obligations under that. And the first one, perhaps you've noticed, but the first clause in that has just two sentences, okay? Number one, two sentences, and one country is named three times in those two sentences. And what country is that? Lebanon. In other words, the Iranians, for some strange reason that is hard for the West to understand, are very principled in their support for the other resistance fighters in Lebanon, okay, in Gaza, and elsewhere where the Israelis occupied territory during the war of 1967. I remember it well. I also remember that was June 1967. In November of the same year, the UN Security Council ruled in a resolution 242, you could look it up, they ruled that Israel must withdraw from the occupied territories. Oh, wow. Well, here it is, 2026. Have they done that? Except from the Sinai? No. They're still in there in strength, and now they're in Lebanon as well. So, in terms of international law, does the resistance have a right to resist? Yes, they do. Matter of fact, they're compelled to resist. Would they resist by force? Would that be legal? I hate to tell you this, folks, but yes, that's fully legal under international law. So when Hezbollah or Hamas or the other folks that do these things are doing this in occupied territories against the occupier, it's not only legal, it's required to protect their people and to regain the independence of those territories.
I'm really glad that you touched up, you touched on that point, because we always hear, you call them, you're saying resistance fighters or resistance groups, those that are resisting against their occupiers or resisting against those trying to occupy them. But they're labeled, the terrorists, and many people go around and have believe the term terrorist because they, the United States is one that deems it, or Israel is the one that deems it that. How would you, as somebody, you've been a former CIA officer, you're an analyst, and great to see you, Captain Josephine, as well. How would you, for those that still call these groups that are defending their lands terrorists, how would you try to describe that to them, that, like you just said, under international law, they have the right to protect themselves and defend themselves in any way or shape or form that is deemed possible? What would you respond to people who, maybe don't have this intellect yet?
Well, let me just go fully true here. I am a descendant of terrorists. I'm Irish. My ancestors know what forced starvation is. They know what the people in Gaza are going through. Okay. Now, did my forefathers, my great-grandparents, have the right to resist the British occupation of their country? Of course they did. Did they suffer for it? Millions suffered. Millions suffered from hunger and died. I was lucky. My great-grandparents escaped the Great Hunger, okay? Maybe I could just, I think probably a personal thing is worth it. I grew up in New York, in the Bronx, and it was a Irish neighborhood. And we had my grandparents and others around the table, and they would be reading from letters from Ireland from a half century before. And I remember one song that came out of these letters from Ireland, and it went like this. The praties are the potatoes, okay? The praties, they are small, over here, over here. Oh, the praties, they are small, over here. Oh, the praties, they are small, and we're coming to the fall, and there's not enough for all over here. No, we sent what money we had over to Ireland, but they were oppressed. They were ruled by the British, and there was a great hunger. So when we talk about what's happening in Gaza, and we see not only forced starvation, but other indignities, other death inflicted on a people who's trying to resist occupation, well, full disclosure, I'm with the quote, well, I'm with the resistance. I will not even say quote around terrorists. They're not terrorists. They're the resistance to the occupiers, fully approved in international. That's not something that people know. So all this business about terrorists, there are terrorists, and it was a terrorist group that started Israel back in 1948 by terrorizing the British in that case and terrorizing the Arabs. And, another little personal thing here. I was born before World War II. And when I was small, I learned about what happened to the Jews. And I was, I remember myself saying, when I get big, that's going to happen again, right? So I'm 9 years old, and there are great parades in New York City, particularly in the Bronx, because Israel had its own country. It was described as a land without people for a people without land. And we all rejoiced. Oh my God, good. The Jews are finally going to have a homeland. Nobody told us, Taz, that there were 750,000 Palestinians living on that land who were driven from their home to places like Gaza. And half of them did end up in Gaza. And what we're seeing now are their grandchildren and their children suffering the same fate. So this all comes into, when I'm big. Well, I'm big now, right? What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to wear a keffiyeh when I speak, usually. I'm going to get out.
Yes.
Truth around, okay? The truth being, look, Israel should have a right to exist, but not a right to plunder and to abuse other countries in its area. And so I sometimes wear this, but I won't wear it now because, we're trying to be objective here, and I don't want to turn off anybody who would be turned off by my keffiyeh. Long story short, I've never seen a situation where the United States of America was led by the nose by what the Iranian foreign minister calls the muzzle on this pet. The pet being Netanyahu and his cohorts. And why don't they put the muzzle on? Well, that's the big question. Will Trump have the wisdom, the courage, and the ability to put the muzzle on? And the place where all this will happen is in Lebanon. And if the Israelis do not stop doing what they're doing in Lebanon, there'll be no open strait, and Trump will have to deal with the results of a worldwide depression. He's in a bad place, and his own damn fault because he listened to the Israelis.
Thank you so much, Ray. Excellent answer. I wanted to also welcome Captain Josephine Gilbo with us. Thank you so much for joining, Captain Josephine. Always great to see you.
Thank you for having me. I couldn't miss this with Ray coming on. I heard you were coming on, Ray, and I was like, oh, I gotta be here for that.
I wanted to, just real quick, Captain Josephine, if you wanted to also kind of chime in on, what Ray was saying with that question of how people are still viewing these groups that are defending themselves as, terrorists. And I know that you have done so much work as well, in the past few years after this genocide has started. So I wanted to get your, kind of few words, if you are able to, and then we'll continue real quick with the other questions. And I see a lot of people that are requesting. We will try to bring up as many people as possible, guys. So just bear with us.
Yeah, so, this isn't the exact conversation that I've probably had hundreds and hundreds of times with people. And I think that it's almost like through trial and error, you learn how to connect with someone in a way that they can understand exactly what's happening on the ground, to these people. And for me, in a way that I've been able to understand it, where someone has been open-minded to hearing it is, I grew up in Louisiana, which is 100 miles from the Gulf of Mexico. And now I currently live in Northwest Ohio, not far from the Canadian border. And if there were to be a foreign country that was to invade the borders of America, whether that would be through the Gulf of Mexico or north in some sort of cahoots with Canada, what would the American people do? There is such a large population of American people who have their own weapons, who have, M9s, shotguns. We have hunters, we have bow hunters, especially in these areas, right? In the South and in the North, in the Midwest. What would they do in order to protect their children, in order to protect their community? And would they be called terrorists by this other country? Right? They probably would be. That is the reality that these people have faced even in Iraq. And I will never forget when I was a young E4, I was a combat medic, and the thought crossed my mind when I saw some sort of report about the fact that one of these quote terrorist ISIS members was a plumber prior to the invasion of Iraq. And I remember something sparking inside of me thinking, wow, plumbers in America would do the same thing if a country invaded their land, if a country came in bombing their children, bombing their water infrastructure, bombing their power grids. How would we, especially patriotic Americans, especially our unorganized militias that exist, especially in the Midwest, especially in the South, what would they do? How would they respond? And then I say that is what people are doing in the Middle East as the United States of America, along with Israel's influence, continues to invade their land. Just today I was doing a lot of research about the Iraqi children that suffered so much, even to this day, all the trauma and generational trauma that still exists amongst these, rural communities of people, of children. And I was just thinking to myself, I have 4 children. What would I have done if someone invaded right now, the United States of America? I would grab my weapons and I would take arms with my community and protect it from anyone trying to invade. That was bombing, starving.
I think it's chopping off. Yeah, I think it's chopping just a little bit.
Yeah, so
I think you're back.
Yeah, so for me to try and explain this, especially to the American ear, I just try and think, what.
Oh, I think we're losing the connection. It's okay. We'll get back to her once she gets in a better area. It is because, we'll get back to her once she gets into a better area. I know because she is on the road, so it's a little bit. We lost her for a second. But we will get right back to you, Captain Josephine. Just let us know when would be a good time, and we'll get you right back in.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, just to wrap that up, the easiest way to explain to American people is to just have them for 1 second put themselves in their shoes, and they would be doing the exact same thing.
Thank you so much, Captain Josephine. Thank you so much. As always, wise words spoken. I wanted to get right back to what we were talking about, Ray. You mentioned, that we were easily manipulated into going and striking Iran for Israel. And we know that Israel's preparing to strike Iran right back up again with Operation Blue and White here that they just came out and announced. Is Trump stuck in this war? And do you see Russia and China entering this war if it does continue?
I think Russia and China have big stakes in what happens here. I think they could get involved more directly as the months go by. Right now, Iran seems to quite capable of having prevailed now and being able to prevail by using its quote nuclear weapon, which happens to be the Strait of Hormuz. Okay. Somebody on a Zoom call with me used the phrase that the president is in dire straits. Well, that's true, but one of those straits is the Strait of Hormuz. He dearly needs to have that open. He thought he had a deal. He thought he could manipulate the Iranians to say, "Well, look, we'll deal with Lebanon later." And the Iranians, to their great credit, said, "No, no, it's all an arc of justice. It's an arc of resistance. We're all in this together. We're not going to leave those people resisting occupation in Lebanon in the lurch just to satisfy ourselves. They're part of this thing. It's an altruistic look, and we're going to defend the Palestinians and other resistance groups in a way that the Arabs, bear in mind the Iranians are not Arabs, right? These Arab rich monarchies and all those, they don't give a rat's ass about Gaza and the Palestinians, but we do. Now, that's hard to understand for us Westerners. We're realistic, and if we had anything to do with it, well, we'd make our own private deal, and we'd say, "Good luck there, Lebanese, good luck." But that's not what the Iranians are doing. And right now, they've begun a celebration of the funeral for their supreme leader, who was killed in his office together with some of his grandchildren and I think was his daughter-in-law at the first morning of the February 28 attack by Israel and the United States. It's a big, big thing. I was on with Professor Morandi at 3 o'clock, and we were live or there was a reporter was live from Tehran, and the masses that are coming there and the 100 countries that are going to be represented in the next few days. It's really amazing, and it shows that by doing the kinds of things that Israel does, you don't gain any credibility or any honor or any respect from the rest of the world. And I just hope that somebody tells them that and says, "All right, this is the time. If not now, when will you finally put the muzzle on the pet and make the pet behave?"
Yeah, absolutely. And we see a lot of, because there's different parties those that support Donald Trump, and they are worried. They're saying that, if Donald Trump was to go right back into this war, that we would, their party would completely lose with the midterms and, quote unquote, taken over by another party. And so it seems like, we know that his numbers and his support amongst his party has dropped to a significant low, but we know that Israel's going to bring us right back into war, and they've already threatened to go into war with Turkey and with Egypt next. I'm sure you've heard that rhetoric where Israel is now targeting Erdogan and saying he's a Islamic theist or terrorist or whatever they're labeling him as, or anti-Semitic leader. They've been trying to sell all these past wars and these current wars because of Islam and the Islamists. Apparently, this rhetoric that we keep on hearing and the takeover of Islam in America. This fear mongering worked for a long time, but as part of the Israeli agenda to kind of justify all of these wars in the Middle East. Do you think our Congress is still buying into this and willing to go into more wars for Israel and with Israel because of this anti-Islamic rhetoric we're hearing, like with Turkey and Egypt next?
I think the problem is that most of our Congress people don't know what war is like real war.
Mm-hmm.
If Israel wants to stir up trouble resulting in wider war, they have no concept as to what that would bring, okay? Now, the thing that I worry most about is, let's say the scenario unfolds this way. The Israelis will not accept the muzzle. They'll continue to do the murder and mayhem and striking with rockets and everything else in southern Lebanon. And so the Iranians say, okay, well, that was not part of the deal. And they'll start striking in behalf of Hezbollah. They've already done this in the past. And so the thing will escalate, okay? So what happens next, okay? Well, then Israel will try to re-escalate. And what the Iranians will say is, oh, wow, we can level you if you don't stop. They don't stop. And the Iranians are starting to level the state of Israel. After all, their hypersonic missiles cannot be defended against. And what happens then? That's my point. What does Netanyahu do then? Okay. Well, here's a guy that does genocide, forced starvation, assassinations galore. You're telling me that he would stop from using his ace in the hole, namely nuclear weapons? I don't think so. There is such a thing as the Samson option. You go back to the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So rather than lose and suffer the indignities of a prison sentence for himself, my guess is the chances are better than even that in extremis, Netanyahu would use the nuclear weapons that he has. Now, I say that in hopes that people will listen and say, look, even Iran, even if you have the capability, which you do, to level Israel, let's caution here. We don't want a nuclear war. Let's come to some sort of agreement so that Israel isn't forced into this situation. That's going to require a lot of deft diplomacy. The Iranians are up to it. Whether the U.S. remains to be seen. Rubio, Hoekstra, J.D. Vance, not up to it yet. Whether the president can finally see the light and say, my God, this is going to really be a bad thing. And the Russians and the Chinese keep telling them, look, knock it off, get the Israelis to come to their senses before they're obliterated, before they're forced into a situation where they might choose to use their ace in the hole, their nuclear weapons, which John Kennedy, the president of which I came down to Washington to serve under, which he tried to prevent the Israelis from getting, and he suffered a price for that. Like
Yes.
part of the reason why the assassination took place. It's very clear now to me and to many others who know a lot more about this than I do.
Thank you for shedding light on that. I wish people would know more about, uh, John F. Kennedy and his efforts to make this world a better place and the cost that he paid for that. It was his life. But with what you were saying about the nuclear arsenal that they have, I mean, we just saw that Israel used what experts say is one of the largest single warhead explosions in modern day history, destroying a village in southern Lebanon. And that massive blast actually registered on the seismic monitors and was heard in Israel. Is this a warning that Israel's showing their cards that they could possibly start resorting to the nuclear weapons in Iran?
Well, it could be. It's hard to say. But they seem hell bent and determined to keep inflicting this damage on southern Lebanon. And if I haven't said it already, the first clause of that agreement talks about Lebanon 3 times in 2 sentences. Lebanon is important to Iran, and the Iranians are making sure that they don't sort of lop off part of this arc of resistance. So, okay, we'll just satisfy our own needs. We'll open the strait and we'll make a deal, but we'll forget about these guys in South Lebanon. They're not going to do that. And this is hard for a Westerner to understand because it's a matter of principle. It's almost altruistic. They feel deeply about this. And that's the real challenge here. Somebody's got to tell Trump this is real. They're not going to settle for anything short of the resistance being able to live and let live, and the Israelis to get out of southern Lebanon, which of course they've promised never, ever, ever to do.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we this is how we know that this is going to continue, because as long as Israel has their objectives, they do not care about what America's objectives or security or interests is, as long as Israel's interests are being met.
Let me interject here because I have a little perspective. Back in 2001, Netanyahu was caught. He was in a living room of supporters, and he was caught on camera, video. Okay, he said, "Turn the camera off." He must have forgotten the guy. Okay, so what is he saying? You can see it's on YouTube. He says, the woman of the house says, "Now, Bibi, aren't you worried that the whole world will turn against us because of what we're doing? And aren't you worried that we'll be so isolated?" And he says, no, the whole world, forget about it. What's important is the United States of America. I know the Americans, they can be bent our way very simply. As a matter of fact, no matter what we do, 80% of the American people will support us. It's absurd, period, end quote. Absurd.
Wow.
It was absurd. Now you can see that. Go to YouTube and see it. 2001. Okay. Now, is that the case anymore? No. Now, young people especially are seeing what justice and injustice brings. And rather than 80% supporting whatever Netanyahu does, less than 50% of Americans polled support Israel now. That's big, okay? And so my appeal would be for us to make our voices heard, to make sure that, for example, Congress in the next days does not pass a bill that sort of melds the American and the Israeli army together, for God's sake, or other bills that prohibit people like me from saying genocide. Of course, it's a genocide. I grew up learning about the genocide of the Jewish people. I said this is not going to happen when I get big. I'm big now. I already said that. I think, and now it's got to be us, have to prevent this from continuing. I mean, my God, I just can't wrap my mind around the fact that we are still supplying the wherewithal, the support, without which the genocide can't happen. So let me just finish with this. There was a fellow named Joe Kent, right?
Yes, Joe Kent that resigned.
Yeah, he was the head of the terrorist group
The counterterrorism.
counterterrorism group, and there was right under the National Intelligence Director. So he's about number 2 or 3 in the whole intelligence setup in the United States. Now, he also happened to have a conscience. So when he could not persuade the president or his boss, Tulsi Gabbard, to oppose the striking against Iran, he wrote a letter to President Trump, whom he had admired in the past. And he said, after a lot of reflection, Mr. President, I must submit my resignation because there was no imminent threat from Iran and because it was Israeli pressure combined with Israeli Zionist pressure from Washington that perpetrated this injustice of war against Iran. Whoa! He said that in 2 sentences. Now that's guts. And that's a person who knows which end is up, right? Head of the Counterterrorism Center. So you have people like that. And he's gotten very little publicity here. And somebody said, somebody said the FBI is looking into whether he leaked classified information. My God, if he's saying Israel made us do it, that's classified? No, it's not classified. But there are bills in Congress that would prohibit you and me from saying that this is a genocide, that it's Israel.
Yes.
I'm big now, and I'm going to proclaim that from the housetops as long as I can.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for making sure. I think not many people know about that quote or have forgotten about what Bibi Netanyahu said. I mean, he's said it all along. It's been in our faces, but people continue to think that Israel is this great ally of the United States of America and cares about the interests of America. And so it's really good that you shed light on that video. And I hope people go and look for it, go watch it yourself if you have any questions or if you have any, thoughts about maybe this isn't true or not, but it is 100% factual. I do want to give a chance for a few others to go ahead and ask questions. I do have more questions, so I'll also kind of interject here with my questions as well. But we'll start with, we'll go with Tumblr. Go ahead, Tumblr. Thank you for joining.
Hey, thanks for having me up. Thanks, Ray, for coming on Taz's show. I remember when I was first learning about this stuff, seeing you on Judge Knapp's show way back in the day. But what do you, I'd like to get your thoughts on how quickly this MAGA movement has turned into a pro-war movement, and really after rejecting or saying they reject the neocon agenda for over 10 years, all of a sudden the neocon agenda is back and it's alive and well. And it seems like we just can't shake it from Bush. And I mean, that's pretty obvious. But we go from Obama to the first Trump term where it seems like it kind of had a pause. And then we had Biden with Syria and some connections to Ukraine and that neocon agenda, and now Trump. And so I'd like your thoughts on that. And then also your thoughts on my opinion is that, the neoconservative movement has nothing to do with conservatism. That's why it shapeshifts into both of these parties, and it has everything to do with just promoting the military-industrial complex through regime change and and nation building.
Well, thanks, Sumner. I'm largely agreeing with you, of course. If you look at the neocons, well, what are they? They're people that consider the interest of Israel to be at least as important as the interest of the United States of America. They are responsible for the war in Iraq. They are responsible for the war in Iran. They are responsible for all this stuff that came out of 9/11 so easily with the distortion of intelligence and everything else. You mentioned the military-industrial complex. That, of course, is of equal importance. I coined an acronym that actually is in dictionaries now. If you pay attention, I'll spell it out for you. It's the Mickey Mat, okay? The military, industrial, congressional, intelligence, media, academia, think tank complex. Now, why do I say media as if in all caps? Because the media is the fulcrum. It's what makes this work or not work. And the media is totally captivated by the people who produce and sell the arms and the people who are what we call neocons, who put Israel first before American interests. So the Mickey Mat is clearly a big factor here, as well as this visceral reaction that we have to protect Israel even when it commits genocide. Another thing, of course, talking about Joe Kent, right? Clark Kent. Yeah, Joe Kent.
Yes, Joe Kent.
2 weeks after he resigned, he said, look, let's be realistic here. The only thing that can prevent Israel from doing what it's doing is to stop the arms, to stop the arms flow, to stop the support, to stop the money, for God's sake. That's the only thing that's going to work. Now, again, that's pretty blunt, pretty simple. Why is it so hard for Americans to understand that? Because of the Mickey Mat and the media right in the middle of it in caps. So that's the problem here. And we have to break through. And it's good that TikTok and other platforms are doing precisely that, because support for Israel is a far cry from what it was when Netanyahu said it was 80% of Americans will support us no matter what we do. Isn't that absurd? Well, it was absurd then, and it ain't no longer the case. It's still absurd that they have about 50% support.
Thank you so much, Tumblr, for your question. And thank you so much, Ray. We'll go to my co-host, Linda. Thank you so much, Linda, for joining as always. Go ahead.
Thank you, Taz. Hello, Ray. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to meet you. My question is as follows. Often, when we ask people why they support Israel, they claim that it's America's greatest ally, especially in intelligence sharing. From your CIA experience, does Israel actually give America the same level of intelligence transparency we provide them? And then my second question to you in relation to this, as the daughter of a Beirut Marine with so many questions surrounding the boomings in Beirut and given the current state of Lebanon right now, how does that fit with documented cases where Israel withheld information, including the 1983 U.S. Embassy and Marine barracks bombings in Lebanon?
Linda, did I hear you say that your dad perished in the Marine barracks bombing?
Sir, he was one of the few lucky ones who survived.
Well, yeah, so you know this with an immediacy that most of us lack. Well, it's very clear that Reagan was sort of persuaded to put battleships, World War II battleships, off the shore of Beirut and bomb the hell out of the Bekaa Valley, and to put Marines in these exposed places and have the embassy not protect it. But Reagan was also smart enough to say, this is crazy, okay? And after those 241 Marines were killed by these bombings of the barracks in Beirut, he asked his advisors, what the hell were they? Why were they there? Why are we bombing the Bekaa Valley? And the answers didn't satisfy President Reagan. And so he said, all right, pull them out gradually, but pull them out. That's stupid. We don't want to stay in there just because Israel wants us to. Now, two things out of that. One is that when he pulled them out, there was a lot of grumbling among the neocons and everybody else. And oh my God, we were chased away and we're not supporting Israel. So there was a felt need to do something really strong. We had to show our power, our might. And so what did they pick? The little island state of Grenada. Then the Caribbean, you probably never heard of it. They sent the 82nd Airborne in there on the subterfuge that U.S. medical students studying at a medical school there might be taken hostage by these Cuban-leaning people, and that the airstrip there in Grenada might be used by the Cubans, and they sent the 82nd Airborne in to fight all these people. Victory, a lot of cheering. There was absolutely no need for that kind of victory, but they needed to deflect attention away from this loss, this embarrassment, and that's what they did. Why do I mention that now? Well, you can look it up. It's really quite a story. But why I mention it now is that we are in for a big defeat, no matter how it comes out, with Iran, okay? Those little sheikdoms, the people that we had bases with in around Iran, they're not going to be around anymore, okay? So we're going to have to show our strength somehow. And what does Marco Rubio want to do? Cuba. He wants to do Cuba again. For God's sake, those communists in Cuba, communists. So that's what I fully expect now after the debacle in Iran. And you can quote me on this several months hence. You'll see Marco Rubio persuading Trump that, look, we got to show ourselves to be smarter and stronger than both there was Southwest Asia. So let's do Cuba. That's what I fully expect. And when it goes down that path, it's really crazy. Now, Linda, you asked one other question, but I forget what it was here. Oh, transparency. Yeah. Did the Israelis know? Did they know that there was going to be a bombing of our embassy in Beirut? Did they know that the Marines were going to be bombed? It's not 100% sure, but there's good reporting indicating, yes, they knew. Did they tell the U.S.? Well, the reporting on that is pretty clear. They didn't tell the U.S. if they knew. So that's the kind of ally you have, an ally that is one-way support. The Israeli intelligence service pretty much persuaded Trump to do this crazy war of aggression against Iran after these same guys persuaded Bush to do a war of aggression against Iraq. What more do you need? Well, I'll tell you what more you need. You need a free press that can say these things, and the free press that can say genocide, 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 and not be visited by the FBI the next day. I was on a British program this morning, and I started out by saying, my friend Kovalik, okay, he was arrested at Liverpool Airport, named after John Lennon of all people, and he was searched, and all his electronics were taken, and they took some DNA from him. Okay, why? Because he's written books about Israeli policy, because he's written books about Ukraine, and because he doesn't fit in with the central thinking here that's allowed. So he was kept. I think he's released now. But my God, there's an author. He's a professor of law at the University of Pittsburgh. He got a reward from Stanford for his human rights activity. And when he gets to Liverpool, the British authorities, the British police, the anti-terrorist police arrest him and arrest him. At least they stop him and they delay him for several hours. I don't think he ended up in jail. Maybe he did. I just haven't followed it. But that's the kind of indignity that is going on in Britain. And what I fear is that this is coming to the United States unless we all, young people especially, make sure that it doesn't happen here. And we have to do that by more than listening to things or saying, oh, isn't that awful? We have to get out there. I'm not saying we have to get our muskets out yet, or our M1s or our AR-15s. But it may come to that, but at least we need to make sure that our representatives in the Congress know how strongly we feel about all this, and if they don't do our bidding, well, there should be hell to pay coming November.
Thank you so much, Ray. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Linda. Thank you. I wanted to really quick ask before we go to Captain Josephine, do you think that continued U.S. support for Israel, does that enhance or diminish America's global strategic position, in your opinion? Oh, do you hear me, Ray? Guys, do you hear me?
I hear you.
Yeah, we hear you.
Ray, do you hear me?
I do hear you. Yeah, I don't know about Josephine though.
Oh no, my question was to you, Ray. I was gonna ask.
Well,
My question was to you before I go to Captain Josephine. I was gonna ask if you believe that continued support for Israel, if that enhances or diminishes America's global strategic position.
uh, Israel is totally isolated worldwide now. They have a lot of Zionists trying to support them, but to the degree we identify with Israel, we too are totally discredited. I mean, how bad does it have to get? Genocide, forced starvation, assassinations is down. Hello? I never thought I'd see the like of it. Yes, our support for Israel is giving us a well deserved black mark within the world community.
Thank you so much. Captain Josephine, do you want to elaborate on that, or kind of what's your take on, this continued support from from our government, but support pushing on pulling away from the people of like the American people and citizens of America for Israel.
Yeah, of course, I think we're at like 74% of the population no longer supports Israel. And so there's something that we're observing right now that's happening as far as like legislation goes. You're looking at all of these bills trying to get pushed and pushed, and everything is happening so quickly. And that is because the American people are now at a single voter issue over the genocide in Gaza. People are literally refusing to vote for any candidate that accepts AIPAC money. And so you see AIPAC trying to go around all of this underneath the umbrella of other PAC names in order to donate to candidates, because supporting Israel has become a single issue as more people become aware of how infiltrated our government is with the Zionists. And so what the future holds for our country and what this this empire, I won't say the people, the empire, and what they're intending to do is, if you look at how the empire is moving, 3 days before the first airstrikes dropped on the boats on the coast of Venezuela, President Trump met in Alaska with President Putin. Now, we will never get complete confirmation about what was discussed, but certainly 3 days later, the Venezuela boats started getting bombed. Russia backed off. There are a lot of trade deals and alliances that were made between Russia and Venezuela, which is a huge reason why the empire chose to take Venezuela first. And we know that they have stolen billions and billions of dollars worth of crude oil since they have captured Maduro, kidnapped Maduro. So if you look at the pieces of empire, kind of like the Game of Thrones, how the intro of Game of Thrones, it shows you all of the different tribes moving around. If you sort of look at what's happening on that scale, it looks like there is an empire sphere of influence that is being created, where sanctions were lifted off of Russia. Eastern European countries and even European countries have opened more trade agreements for oil with Russia because of the Strait of Hormuz being shut down. I believe this is all a part of the plan. You have Governor Jeff Landry from Louisiana, who is still talking about 2027 being the year that they're going to take Greenland. And if you look at the Monroe Doctrine, which was written in order to keep the British Empire out of South of America, but it has been flipped on the table, and now it's the Monroe Doctrine, where the American empire is now going to focus its efforts in Southern SOCOM. That's what we call it in the military, SOCOM. They're invested 20 billion taxpayer dollars into Argentina to basically buy that country. They're occupying Venezuela. They're talking about Cuba. They're looking at shifting effort, military might, and money into dominating the South America and Greenland. and then sort of giving the power of Europe and West Asia to countries on the other side of the sphere. And so what's going to happen is that's going to leave Israel completely isolated without the weapon systems, without the investment from America. And so what they're doing in Iran right now is they literally said what they were going to do, bombing it back to the Stone Ages. 600 schools, universities, cultural centers, hospitals, water treatment facilities, oil refineries, everything has been bombed in Iran, and it truly is going to take years in order for them to rebuild this infrastructure. And this is exactly what Israel wanted, because this gives Israel more time to start manufacturing their own weapons. They're talking about doing that already. And in the meantime, they're pushing legislation through Congress saying that only by the signature of the President of the United States can intelligence sharing stop between Israel. They are trying to push that right now, where no military commander, no congressional leader, only the President of the United States of America will be able to stop intelligence sharing and cooperation between the two militaries. This is unprecedented. This is a foreign nation that has infiltrated our government, and these things are moving quickly, because 2027 is going to be a huge year where many of our military assets are going to shift to Southern Command, and you're going to see the American empire using the propaganda of fighting the cartels, of fighting against fentanyl, of fighting against drugs and immigration and all these things. And now the target is going to be these countries in South America, and Israel is going to be left alone to fight itself in this mess and chaos that it has made with all of these countries in the Middle East.
Wow, perfectly said, Captain Josephine. I don't think many people understand what's going on in the Southern Command and what that means for the future. So, the question is would voting with the midterms coming up, is that going to make any difference here? I mean, what can we do to stop some of this from happening? Just real quick, if you can elaborate.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that voting is the only answer. I do believe that it slows down the suffering that ultimately can come to the American people. I mean, the American people are already suffering. If you, I live day to day in the Midwest in Ohio. People are living literally paycheck to paycheck. They're one check away from being homeless, struggling to pay for food, they don't have health care. I mean, 54% of Americans do not have access to health care. This is like a record number of Americans in modern times. What is going to happen to America as the isolation continues is that the American people are going to suffer more. And, I think voting kind of slows down that suffering, allowing us to have these conversations to wake people up, because it's not just going to be voting in Congress. You're talking about your, like your school board. What curriculum are we pushing? What education are we pushing to the American people? How can we get people in these local elected positions, city council, mayor, all of these positions matter so much, because the change is going to have to happen from the bottom up. And these types of conversations are so important for people to be getting more involved. It's not easy to continue to travel across the country. That's why getting involved in your community, joining things like the Rotary Club, your local church, going to the city council meetings, being a face that is present in your community is so important, because that is how we truly can make a change within our society to stop waging death and destruction. We may not have been able to, a good friend of mine, Josh Paul, former State Department diplomat who resigned. I one day I called him and I said, Josh, I don't think we're going to stop this genocide. And I was just so heartbroken. And, this was, we might not be able to stop this one, but we can stop the next one. And that just it's so heartbreaking to think that if we as a society don't change all together collectively to stop the death and destruction that our empire is causing, another genocide will happen.
What genocide are you talking about?
Thank you. Oh, excuse me one second. Wait. Well, thank you so much, Captain Josephine. We'll go back and I agree 100% with everything that you said. Phenomenal. Really quick, I do want to go right back to our panelists. So we'll go to Just Facts. Go ahead, Just Facts.
Thank you, Taz. Hello, thanks for being a guest here. Great listening to you. So, as a former CIA agent, I just want to know your opinion about. I'm an Iranian. I was born there. I'm 100% Persian, and I am against IRGC and Pahlavi. But I wanted to get your opinion on Reza Clounavi, and furthermore, what your opinion is when people in diaspora, especially the Persians, say that 95% of the Iranians in Iran are pro-Shah and they want Reza to come back. So from like a former CIA perspective, if you can kind of speak to that and what the temperature you think is in Iran.
Sure, yeah. That's, in my view, that's nonsense. That's propaganda. This whole notion that most Iranians hate the regime is just not. You have lots of propaganda saying that up to 50,000 people were killed in those protests earlier this year and earlier still. Well, that just isn't the fact. Those are not the facts. Those are the propaganda. And a lot of those people that were killed, maybe 10,000, 15,000, were actually killed. They were the police trying to suppress these things. So when I hear that most of the people really resent the government Iran, that's just not square with what I've been told. And I think that if you look at it closely, you'll see that not only before the attack on Iran, but especially after, the people have coalesced into supporting the Supreme Leader's son, who is the new Supreme Leader. And that may be hard for us to understand, but it's fact. And that's what we have to deal with, is the facts, not just things that are bandied about how Iranians hate the regime. It ain't so. And most people talk about 1979, and you mentioned, I think, the Shah and the Shah supporters. Well, 1979 is not the benchmark. 1953 is. Now, you say you're a former CIA person. Do you know that we overthrew the duly elected Prime Minister of Iran in 1953? We and the British. Do you know that when he came into power, his name was Mossadegh. I remember as a young child seeing his picture. He was Time Person of the Year, the first popularly elected in a clean election Prime Minister of Iran in hundreds of years. Okay, what happened to him? Well, when he came in, he was a populist, and he looked at the riches of his country, and he said, "My God, look at that oil; it's worth so much." And British are taking 95% of it and giving us a pittance. I think we should own the oil underneath our fertile land here, and so maybe we ought to nationalize this. What happened? Well, the British MI6, the CIA equivalent, took Kermit Roosevelt and the other CIA operatives by the shoulder. CIA was just a fledgling organization at the time. This is 1953. CIA came into being at 1947. Okay, so this is what you do with an upstart third worlder. Overthrew most of it. Placed in a very, very cruel Shah, who had his own secret police called Savak, which was on a par with the Gestapo in Nazi Germany. And what did they do? They ran a very restrictive regime. And so when the Shah got sick, okay, he had cancer, okay, what happened? Jimmy Carter, our president, had to make a decision of conscience. Would he let this Shah in our country and get medical care? Well, he decided to go ahead and do that against a lot of advice. And what happened? Well, the students saw this as an opportunity and a threat. The threat came from, oh my God, they're going to put a new Shah-type guy in. They'll figure this all out in the U.S. and then they'll tell the embassy, and we'll be subjected to 30 more years of a Shah. Let's raid the embassy. Now, that was the background. Do I favor raiding the embassy? Of course not. but it didn't come in a vacuum. They looked and they found all these papers about what happened in 53 and what was about to happen then. That's why they took the hostages. Do I favor taking hostages? Of course not. But that's where it started. So that was the coup. That brought in the Shah. And now they're talking about the Shah's son, who might come in, has no support at all in Iran because of what happened in 1953, not what happened in 1979. And as people become aware of that, and maybe I should adduce this fact as well, since Captain Josephine is still on, I hope. She had the courage to appear in uniform before the Israeli embassy in Washington about 2 years ago, when a young Air Force person named Aaron Bushnell, so upset at what our country was doing to the Palestinians, self-immolated, fancy word for set himself afire, killed himself in front of the Israeli embassy. Captain Josephine didn't wait but 4 hours to get there before the same embassy at the same spot, and explained exactly why he did what he did and how bad the situation was from her own experience as a captain in the U.S. Army. That's guts, okay? Aaron Bushnell is a good example. Now, there's another good example. It just happened yesterday. An Air Force
Yes, Jason.
with a big sign here saying, impeach,
Convict.
imprison, is it? Or I think the last one was put in jail or something like that. Well, how? He was in full uniform there in the.
It was removed.
Right. What was his name, Captain Josephine?
His name is Jason Watson.
Yeah. Okay. So here's a guy who's protesting. Now, what happened to him? Oh, well, some police people wrapped him right up. What right did they have to do that? He's an active military service guy. It's the military that should deal with this sort of problem. But no, he was just scooped up, and God knows where he is now and what he's being subjected to. Now, so there's a good thing. A man of conscience had the integrity to do this, just like Aaron Bushnell did in a different way. So with these kinds of people that we can model our behavior on, we can take some risks, because we have to be, in the words of 250 plus years ago, we have to be winter soldiers, okay? We can't be summer soldiers because it's winter. And on our 250th anniversary, it hangs in the balance whether we will continue to be a republic or we will kind of descend into something much worse. It's up to us. And we have to work not only with our Congress people, as Captain Josephine has said, but also get off our rear ends and say, hey, this is important. We're going to show where we stand here. And the Aaron Bushnells and the Air Force Major who just made this protest should be our models. We should have the guts to go forth and do likewise.
Thank you so much, Fax, for that question. And thank you so much, Ray. Yes, we've seen Captain Josephine and those like Anthony Aguilar and Jason and Aaron Bushnell and many others that have come out and spoken and protested against what we are currently witnessing from the genocide to this current war in Iran.
Does your audience know about Tony Aguilar?
He's actually with us right here. He's next. Hello, Anthony.
Hey,
yeah.
So Tony,
Anthony, are you with us?
Yeah, I'll just say a word about Tony and not steal his thunder, but he sort of is a believing Catholic, like me and like Captain Josephine, and he thought that feeding the hungry was a good thing to do. And so, take it from there, Tony.
Thank you so much, Anthony, for joining us. It's always great to have you, as always. As we've been discussing here in this on this panel and with these in this conversation that we've been having, do you think that there could be, or actually, what are the biggest risks that do you think that the United States will risk if this regional conflicts continue throughout 2027, as we're seeing Israel say that they're looking to do so here in the next few days or soon, quote unquote, that they can go right back into Iran, and the way that they're doing with Lebanon, with all of these really heavy warheads that they've been now unleashing on Lebanon, and then continuing to strike Gaza, which, for anybody who's not aware, this today marks the 1,000th day since in this genocide. 1,000 7 days where Palestinians have been suffering and being killed and being bombed and being starved by Israel. So, I wanted to kind of get your opinion here on what you think are the biggest risks to the United States if we were to continue in this regional war that they're doing.
Hello, Ray. It's good to see you, and thank you, Taz, and hi, Josephine. I think that the biggest risks that the United States faces in one to security in the region and direct threat to not only our military but our security posture in the world, but also directly here at home. I think that our national debt is becoming one of the greatest security risks to our nation because we are now insolvent in our debt. The amount of debt that we owe, our national GDP that we bring in doesn't even bring in enough annually to pay the debt per year on our national debt. So imagine if you're paying your home mortgage using your credit card, and you've now met the limit of your credit card, but with all of your monthly income from your job and what you bring in is only enough to pay the interest off on that credit card each month. So you're not actually gaining any power to purchase anything in an emergency. You're completely insolvent. Well, our nation is now at that point. We are technically, literally at that point. And this war continues to cost every American at home, every American household, regardless of your income, $1,000 per household. So for some, that's rent, that's a mortgage, that's a car payment, that's your entire month of bills that you're paying away to this war. So that's a risk to not only our population, but to our country's ability to defend ourselves rather than continuing to protect and violate our own values and, quite frankly, betray our nation for Israel. But what we're seeing now in this region specifically that gives me great fear, and I wanted to ask Ray about this also to get his take on it, but I'll share my take first so it's not a gotcha question. I'll put my cards on the table first, but it has now been revealed by U.S. intelligence, and it was broke in the New York Times today, that the United States has had and has legitimate fear that Israel has been attempting to assassinate the Iranian foreign minister Arachi and the Iranian speaker, and in actual attempts that were taken out by Israel to assassinate them while the United States was in negotiations. And when the aircraft was turned around because there was risk that it would be shot down, because Israel did scramble fighters, they then landed in Mashhad, where there was another attempt where Israel was attempting to assassinate these two leaders. They were then put on a train to travel back to Tehran. Mashhad is not that far from Tehran. Here's my concern. In the last, I have it written down here because I was actually looking at it in the last decade, Israel has either successfully executed or has attempted assassinations in Malaysia, Tunisia, Gaza, the West Bank, Iran, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and Qatar. We know that Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's funeral procession, starting on the 4th, ending on the 9th, with his burial in Mashhad, his birthplace, where Israel has attempted to assassinate the foreign minister and the parliamentary speaker before, that my concern is that Israel is going to act alone under the umbrella of Operation Blue and White to assassinate a key figure within the IRGC or the Iranian government in order to spark the powder keg of which is already brewing in the area. And for those that aren't keeping track of it, the United States has not only not redeployed forces from the region, we've actually increased. We're now upwards of about 60,000 because we just redeployed. It had come out. We sent it back. It arrived in theater. It arrived into the Indian Ocean or to the Arabian Sea today. And that's the USS Boxer. That's a WASP-class Marine lightning carrier specifically designed to conduct amphibious assault, meaning ship-to-shore assault on an island. So now we're up to about 60,000 back in the region. We haven't reduced. We have the U.S. Central Command Commander Brad Cooper telling the Lebanese Armed Forces Commander and Chief of Staff that we've got 50,000 soldiers at the ready to support you as you need it against Hezbollah. We have redeployed U.S. forces into the airbase, let's see, Al Anad Air Base in Yemen. So we now have U.S. forces in Le Monnier, Djibouti, and Al Anad Air Base, Yemen, both sides of the Strait of Bab el-Mandab. The Strait of Hormuz is far from being figured out. Iran has stepped away from negotiations, so that turd is kind of just left on the table. And the Kurds in Iran, the KDPI and the PJAK, the Kurdistan Free Life Party, are now in direct confrontation, fighting, killing each other with the IRGC along the Iraqi border, which are being sponsored by the PKK, the Iraqi Kurds, and the United States. We're backing that. So when you look at all these things happening, my question is, what are your thoughts on the percentage of likelihood of Israel attempting an assassination attempt in the next 5 days between the 4th and the 9th of July?
Oh, wow.
And what are your thoughts now on the growing intervention, the growing the growing number of fighters that are being funneled into the Azerbaijan territory, the Azerbaijan province of Iran along the Iraqi border, where we're now seeing the KDPI and the PJAK in direct fighting with the IRGC? Do you see that potentially expanding? And to answer those questions for you, so I'm not putting you on the spot, I'll put my cards out first. I think that Israel will attempt an assassination attempt in the next, between the 4th and the 9th. And I do think that the Kurdish, the growth of Kurdish fighters on the border will increase with the U.S. continuing to back it.
Well, thanks, Tony. That's an incredible update here, a situation report. I agree with you. The odds are, I'd say, less than 100%, maybe 99%, that these assassination attempts will occur. I mean, they've done this every time there was the possibility of a successful outcome to a negotiation. They like to kill the negotiators. So in one sense, that's heinous. In another sense, will that change anything? Well, we already have several precedents. It does not change anything. It just makes the Iranian people more stalwart in support of the government. And so, yeah, there will be assassination attempts, and the next couple of days are probably the prime season for it. But whether it will change anything other than to make the negotiations even more difficult is another question. The other question you had about the Kurds, well, the Kurds are pawns of history. There were Kurds that were ready to do our bidding earlier on in February and March, and nothing came of it. It's really hard for me to know how these Kurds sort of fighting with each other are going to help either side in this conflict. The nub of the question, of course, is what does Trump desperately need? He needs the strait opened. He is in dire straits, so to speak, okay? And, they might think of putting a straight jacket on the guy because he's not all there with it. So what will he do? I don't know what he will do, but neither does Netanyahu, okay? So if his priority is to get this thing settled somewhat, getting the strait open, well, that will redound on his standing up and saying, all right, Israel, for God's sake, knock it off in Lebanon, because these Iranians, for some reason, feel really strong about their brothers in Lebanon, and they're not going to open the strait until you put a muzzle on the pet that you have in Tel Aviv. That's how I read it. Does that make sense to you, Tony?
It does make sense. And, I think that where we stand right now is that Donald Trump doesn't even know what Donald Trump thinks or what he will do. And it's dangerous when an ally, and I use that word loosely, like Israel, when Netanyahu feels like he doesn't know what the United States will do one way or another. Therefore, the lone acting or Israel's own actions is where we usually see Israel doing that. And their actions are typically very reckless with no consideration of how it throws the region into further turmoil, or maybe they do know how it throws the region into further turmoil, and that's kind of their goal. I'm increasingly concerned about not only the firm stance on staying in Lebanon, and I printed this out to look at it. When you look at this is where Israel occupies in Lebanon. Look at that. Here's the Litani River. If you look at how much Israel is occupying in Lebanon, that is a lot of territory. And then most recently, Israel conducted attacks and strikes further into Syria in Abdin and Jamal, pushing further into Syria, expanding this. And if you look at that on the map between the Litani River into Syria along the Euphrates, that is that corridor that they want to build to connect the northern part of the greater Israel. So it's very concerning. With the Kurdish piece, what worries me is that what has the United States promised the Kurds this time? And again, you're right. I've fought with the Kurds, in Iraq and in Syria. And the promises that we've made to the Kurds since the 80s, since before the 80s, over and over and over again, we, the United States, constantly leave them hanging and back out on our side of the deal. I'm surprised that the Kurds would even take our phone calls anymore, to be quite honest. But the fear I have for the Kurds' involvement is that what has the United States promised? Because anything that the United States could promise, the only thing that the Kurds value is power, either politically or militarily, to further pursue their goals of the Rojava. And that directly is a threat to Turkey. And I experienced that in person when we were in Syria fighting ISIS with the Syrian Democratic Forces, which were the Kurds. We took the PKK out of Iraq. General Mazloum, one of the ardent followers of Öcalan, told him, take off your PKK patch, put on this SDF patch, come over with us to Iraq. And the Turks were like, hold on, we see what you're doing here. You better have a tight leash on them. And then as soon as ISIS was defeated, or at least we claim they were defeated, the Turks invaded. I mean, the riskiest time in Syria was when U.S. forces we were trying to race south of the M4 highway because the Turks were coming over in Operation Euphrates Fountain. So will Turkey do something militarily? They absolutely will. And depending on what the United States has promised to the Kurds, could only irritate further our relationship with Turkey. And our relationship with Turkey is already strained because of our dogged, parasitic relationship with Israel. So I fear for how these things are unfolding. And when you look at how does a world war start, the sides don't come together and do a thumb war and say, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, I declare a world war. We're in war now, right? No.
That's crazy.
All of these conditions boil to the surface over time. And that is literally what we're seeing in our time, in our lifetime, in our timeline of history. I feel like we're in June and July before the World War I started in August of Barbara Tuchman's novel or historiograph, The Guns of August. I feel like we're sitting in that time in this history line. And it's pretty concerning because I know a lot of Americans and others like to think, oh, that won't happen. Well, it could, because we have quite literally a drunk at the wheel, Pete Hegseth, and a sociopath, deranged president in the passenger seat, and we're following Israel on the highway to Shittstown, and we passed the last exit to get off, which was this MOU. So I'm really concerned about where this is going here in the next month and a half.
Tony, I just want to thank you for that wrap up here. I'm equally concerned. I mean, anyone listening would see this as a can of worms. Anyone listening or knowing about how we treated the Kurds in the past will realize that any Kurd over 22 years old will have real misgivings about trusting the United States and really wondering about what the Turks will do to the Kurds if they do trust the United States. And lastly, I'd just like to comment on what you call the deranged passenger in this Pete Hegseth-driven aircraft. This is a real concern. Is this person compos mentis? There are lots of indications that now he's back fighting the communists, as he said yesterday. Now he's doing all kinds of strange things. He gets up in the morning and he writes strange things that don't make sense. And worse still, in my view, is to watch how long it took our president to tie a Medal of Honor around an Army officer's neck. I counted the seconds. It was 52 seconds. It probably had a little clasp on. All he had to do was, but he insisted on doing a bow, and he couldn't do a bow. And he turned to the audience and says, "Oh, this is hard." And then he finally, 52 seconds, he tied some bow around it. It was real up against this guy's neck. I mean, he didn't get killed by the enemy. Might be strangled to death. But
That's
anyhow,
crazy.
if you look at that, and you say, well, theoretically, the Army manual says that you should be able to tie on a Medal of Honor in 60 seconds. 60 seconds. Whew, he just made it in 52. So his manual dexterity is not what I don't know who ties his shoelaces. Maybe Hoekstra, huh? You think? So, I mean, I wish this were funny. I mean, the Russians are looking on, the Iranians are looking on, but I'm a little bit more relaxed because there are people in the United States who also are influential and want that strait opened, okay? There are people that a lot of money depends on, the oil people and others. So I think that there is equal pressure on Trump to say, okay, look, Netanyahu, if you don't play by my playbook, you're on your own. Good luck. We're not going to give you any more military weapons. Let me, if we have time for 2 more minutes, let me explain my first experience with the pressure, the power of the Israel lobby. Okay.
Yeah, I would love to hear that. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm a young officer in the CIA, an analyst, and my boss is testifying before the church committee about CIA crown jewels being revealed. Okay, so I'm representing the director, Director Colby, and the Turks invade Cyprus. My God, what happens? Well, there's a big Greek lobby in our U.S. Congress, and they impose an embargo against arms to Turkey. And Kissinger goes up the wall. We can't do that. Turkey's so important in NATO and all that stuff. We have to get the embargo lifted. So I'm down at the State Department, right, representing the Director Colby, and I hear all this grousing about 12 other very senior officials. My God, what are we going to do? Kissinger wants. So I said, well, wait a second. What? Look at it this way. There could be something positive come out of this. And I said, what could be that, Ray? I said, well, look at it. Maybe with this embargo, because Turkey used U.S. arms against U.S. law in confronting somebody else, well, maybe the next time the Israelis decide to take off one of their neighbors, they'll think twice about why. That was really like I was from Mars. What? And then I said, no. I said, no, it never happened. So then I realized, well, what was I, 30 years old at the time? I said, holy Moses. I didn't say Moses. I said, holy. I mean, here it is, visceral and audible. Is what? So the Israel lobby is very, very strong. They finally presented with Turkey to persuade the Turks. Now get this. We had at that time very sensitive technical collection bases in Turkey. And Kissinger was saying to the Congress, oh my God, the Turks are going to close us out from those bases and will not have any collection capabilities against the Soviet Union. Oh, that's to be terrible, okay? So Director Colby, who had his head on straight, he says, Ray, is this a real threat? I said, well, I don't think so. I don't think the Turks, the Turks are going to. So he said, well, look, do a memo and here, get this naval officer. He's one of my friends. Get him to tell you what the capabilities are in Sinop and other places in Turkey. So he came up to my office, right? This former admiral. I'll remember his name in a second. And he said, how can I help you? I said, well, what about these bases? If we lose them to Turkey, if they close them, what happens? He says, no problem. we got all kinds of ways. They're already up there to do a better job than Sinop and all these other kinds of things. So forget about it. It doesn't matter. Now, did Kissinger do that? No. Kissinger said, no, this is terrible. So what he asked the ambassador, his name was McGovern at the time. He says, look, close those bases and tell the world that Turkey made you close the bases. And then we'll get the arms coming again. And so that's what happened. One midnight, I'm on the phone from my office with Colby in the operations center, and he says, Kissinger just overturned us. He's going to close the bases without the Turks even asking them to close them. So then you get the Congress to say, oh my, this is terrible. And they lifted the embargo, which they did. So what I'm trying to say here is that the Turks are really important here, but the precedent here, the precedent that I experienced when I said, well, maybe Israel might be a little bit more reluctant to attack another country with U.S. arms, well, the reaction I got was extraordinary. I don't know the adjective that applies here, but I was shocked. And then I realized, holy Moses, what a stronghold the Israel lobby and the Zionists in our government, including the State Department, had back in 1974 now, okay, on our policymaking. End of little story.
Wow, thank you so much for that. I mean, I think for people to hear these stories and to listen to them, it's very important because it really shows the impact of how far and how far along they've come in. I mean, we saw Pentagon raising the threat level of Israel spying on the United States of America to critical, the highest level, higher than Al Qaeda, higher than ISIS, etc. So it's very important to hear these stories, and so I really appreciate it. Do you have time for just one more question, or one question from the rest of 4 questions total, if that's okay with you? Okay, excellent. So guys, for everybody else that's up on the panel, I'm going to go one by one, but please keep it to one question. I'd really appreciate that. We'll go to Hussam. Go ahead, Hussam.
Hi, thanks for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on here. I wanted to state that among our younger generation, there's growing sentiment against the state of Israel, who's supposed to be our greatest ally. We don't view this as a symbiotic relationship. It's more like a leech on a host, and the leech has grown out of hand. We feel this way because they have an overrepresentation in our government. We feel that it's nearly unconditional. They support the support that our politicians provide, the things that our media spits out. There's an ongoing genocide in Gaza and now in Lebanon. We have events that took place in the past, like the USS Liberty, the Levant affair, the King David Hotel bombing, and other major events. Are our reviews warranted, in your opinion? And do you see hope that this country can distance themselves from Israel?
Yes, the good news is I do see that possibility. It's almost a unique possibility now that Trump needs so desperately to get that straight open. And because the Iranians care about the people in Lebanon as well as other people who are suffering under Israeli occupation. So let's talk about what's left of my lifetime, okay? This is the chance in the rest of my lifetime to see the U.S. finally say, no, we don't want a wider war, and we don't want to be led by the nose. We're going to put a muzzle on our pests, as Arachi said, the foreign minister of Iran. We're going to put a muzzle on, and we're not going to give him any more support if he gets involved individually by restarting the war with Iran. I think there's a good chance of that happening. I hope I'm right on that. But that's more a guess than an expectation. But it's the first time that the cards have been aligned in this manner. I'm hopeful. Good question.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Hussam.
Appreciate that.
Excellent question. Thank you so much. And thank you for your answer, Ray. We'll go to Redacted. Are you with us? Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I'm still with you.
Oh, do you want me to come back to you?
No, it won't take me a second. So my question is, given what we've
Are you
seen,
going to just have to higher your voice just a little bit, please?
Oh yeah, is that better?
That's better.
Yes, much better.
All right, sorry about that. So given what we've seen throughout history, Operation Earnest Will, Operation Praying Mantis, stuff like that, yada yada, we've avoided direct conflict with Iran, as far as I'm aware, because general knowledge was that they would close the Strait of Hormuz first thing they did. So in your analysis, do you think this was something that I, with my complete lack of military intelligence, just don't understand? Or do you think that this was pure, sheer stupidity?
The latter.
That's what...
I'm on record as saying, despite all that military hardware and all those aircraft and everything else that Trump has sent into the area, we're talking January, February, right? I said, he couldn't possibly attack Iran. because they closed the Strait of Hormuz, for God's sake. And they'd lose the midterm elections. So, God, this is just big bluff. So I was wrong, but for very sensitive. And now he's in a box. What's he going to do? Well, we talked about that before. So don't feel alone here. I, too, was convinced that this was just crazy for him to be doing. But we have a bunch of crazies, and a bunch of Zionist crazies advising him. And, of course, he listened to that briefing from David Barnea, the head of Mossad. And Mossad said, just as the Israelis said before the attack on Iraq, this is going to be a cakewalk. No problem. We'll decimate their leadership. There'll be an uprising, and we'll be sitting pretty. None of that happened. Now Trump has to deal with the rest of that. So again, a good question.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for doing it. I'm not going to ask another question. Just thank you for doing it. And unfortunately, that is the answer I expected. So God help us all.
Yeah, amen. Thank you so much, Redacted. We'll go to Falastini, and go ahead.
Thank you, Taz. Good evening, Mr. Ray McGovern. I'm a huge fan. My question is, and it's completely side note from everything that's been talked about tonight, but if I'm not mistaken, you were one of the few ex-CIA analysts to confront Mr. Rumsfeld in 2006. And I just want to hear it from you, lip to mouth. What was your experience like during that time, as the war was still going, and how did it feel to be filmed by the news while you were confronting him? It was amazing to watch, by the way.
Well, I'll explain it because it has a teaching point to it. Okay, what you need to do is get yourself into a position where you can ask a regular question during a Q&A. Or, as Captain Josephine has done, challenge them without being recognized. Show the hypocrisy of what these lawmakers are doing or what the Secretary of Defense is doing. So here's the teaching point. I happen to be in Atlanta, Georgia, to receive an award from the Civil Liberties Association. And I heard from contacts in the progressive community, Donald Rumsfeld is speaking at a well-heeled militaristic think tank. We can get you a ticket, Mr. McGovern. It's at noon, and you're not due to accept this award till 7 o'clock. So would you do it? And I said, well, how much does the ticket cost? $65. Well, no, we'll give you the $65. Would you do it? So I said, of course I will do it. So I was all dolled up in what I was going to wear that evening, and I went in, and I got a good seat, right? And Rumsfeld is lying through his teeth about everything, and so I'm taking little notes, and I wasn't able to be the first one up for the Q&A, but I was the second one, okay? And I said, now, Mr. Rumsfeld, you talked about weapons of mass destruction. You said you knew where they were, and you specified 4 places, but they weren't. How do you explain that? He says, I didn't say we knew where they were. I said, yes, he did. And I quoted him something he told George Stephanopoulos just a year before, okay? And then I said, how about these ties between Iraq and Al-Qaeda? The CIA and my friends said there weren't any operational ties. Only your guys in the Department of Defense said there were operational ties, and you said that they were ironclad. Where'd you get that from? Were you lied to? I said, oh, no, well, so anyhow, they captured this. It was fortuitous. I told you, 12 o'clock noon, right? Atlanta, CNN cameras, C-SPAN cameras, everything's live, right? And when the guy with the black hat was going to carry me away, Rumsfeld looked at the cameras and he said, oh, this would not be what today they call a good look. This would not be a good look. So he let me stay. 4 minutes of this interrogation of Rumsfeld, where he demonstrably lied, and early in the afternoon, early enough to get on almost every outlet or station that evening. Now, here's another teacher. So you have to sort of be available for this lucky situation when it presents itself, and then you have to trust women who bought that ticket. I reimbursed them for it because it was really worth it. The date was May 6th. You can look it up, Rumsfeld McGovern on YouTube. But another teaching point, which is really important, is that as I'm going out of this well-heeled, white, male, militaristic think tank, okay, I get a call. Oh, Mr. McGovern, this is Anderson Cooper. You're stirring up quite a bit of trouble here in Atlanta. So, oh, hi, Anderson. How are you? Well, I'd like to have you on my program tonight, but first I have to ask you, weren't you afraid? I thought to myself, pretty boy on CNN, heir to the Vanderbilt fortune. He's not going to be out on the streets of Atlanta with his hat collecting. No. So I said, Anderson, let me just be fair and square with you, direct. No, it's a big high. It was a wonderful experience. You might want to think of trying it. Prepare yourself, ask them real questions. You'll see it's a wonderful experience, Tucker. And Tucker, well, that's very well and good. I'll have my people get in touch with your people. I said, no, don't do that, Tucker. Why? I mean, don't do that, Anderson. Why? I don't have any people. No people. You have my number. Just give me a call. Well, I'll have my people give you a call. Postscript. That evening, I get on his program. The first question he asks me, guess what? Were
you afraid? Yes.
My God, they have no concept of what the hell they're supposed to be doing. Holding these guys accountable. So there were lots of teaching points there, lots of lessons. But for you all, especially young people, get out there. Get into these places where you could ask your representative or your senator. Ask Captain Josephine how to do it. She's an expert at it, and so is Tony Aguilar. Okay, now they may rough you up. They might put you in handcuffs and book you and all that stuff. Isn't that worth it? I mean, we're supposed to be winter soldiers, right? So take that as a case of not only being lucky, but being kind of contacts that tip you off to these opportunities, and you get your rear end there, and you ask those questions whether you're permitted to, as I was, or not.
Well, Ray, I am not a Ray McGovern, but after hearing this from your lips, I will definitely be inspired to be one day.
Well, terrific.
Oh, there we go. Thank you so much, Felicity. Thank you for that story, Ray. We'll go to Rachel. Go ahead, Rachel.
Thank you. That was a very interesting live, and it still is. I have a question regarding, something that happened sometime in the past where President Trump was pulling the chair for Netanyahu to sit.
I think you have to speak a little bit louder, please.
Louder? Okay, let me get closer to the microphone. I am sure you guys all remember when President Trump was pulling the chair for Netanyahu to sit. He was signing a document. I think it happened twice, and it's kind of like shocking for a head of state. It never happened. Nobody in the world did such a thing. So my question is, as I hear, put the muzzle on the dog, restrain him, I feel like, who is the dog? Like, could it be us? Could it be the same? We are one entity. There is no one pulling the string, and the other one is a dog.
She's saying, who is the dog? Is it Bibi Netanyahu? Is it Donald Trump?
That is the question, to be or not to be. What we really need is a supreme being that would have two muzzles, right? And put a muzzle on each of them and have them come to their senses. No, your point is quite correct. Who is leading this thing? Well, we know from what Secretary Rubio said that it was Netanyahu that orchestrated this whole thing and then forced the U.S. hand on the 28th of February. But now there's a chance in a lifetime, my lifetime, where the United States has such equities in reopening that strait and getting other things done. There's an equal chance, in my view, that this time the muzzle will be put on the Israeli leaders, many of them worse than Netanyahu, and we will have a measure of peace in that area. That's all very tentative, but I like to be a hopeful soul. And when there's a difference in kind in this situation, and I see a silver lining, let's choose the silver lining and do everything we can to promote peace and just come against what are what our Zionist designated, Zionist dominated people tell us every day.
Officials, yeah. Yep. Exactly. Thank you so much, Ray. And there is a question from the chat, and we have, I believe, our brother Just here that wanted to ask it. I forgot to ask it earlier about the 7 nations. Is that correct, brother on top? The one.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
sister. I'm
I
so
wanted to
sorry,
ask that question.
sister. Go ahead.
No, it's fine, sis. So I wanted to ask this question regarding, okay, apparently there were 7 nations that were supposed to be attacked after 9/11. And it's making sense right now. It came back to fruition. These 7 nations were Libya, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Somalia, Iran was the last of them. So I just wanted to know why these 7 nations were targeted.
Well, because of the Zionists. Now, it was General, what's his name? A retired general that came across this memo. And he did that. It was right after 9/11, if memory serves. What's interesting here is that this good general kept it all to himself. He didn't tell anybody until he was making a bid for president. And he said, oh, I know this too. In other words, there are people so afraid to reveal this information, even though it's clear what happened, that this general and others just kept this information to themselves. This is all laid out in some of the documents of the what they call the Zionists and the people that composed this, actually well before Bush and Cheney took office. So it goes back a long time. What I see as the hopeful sign is that it's coming to a point now where the interests of the United States and the interests of Israel diverge in a very marked way for the first time in many, many years. And there's a chance, because of the equities involved with the reopening of the strait and the resistance, the samud, if you will, of the Iranian people, that this might come to a better end than we expect in such circumstances. That's just a hope. It's partly expectation, but what's new about it is this is the first time that it's come to this kind of pass. Will Trump be up to reining in or putting the muzzle on Netanyahu? Well, you'd have to be from Missouri, from the show me state, to believe that, but I prefer to be from Missouri for at least the next while to see how it comes out.
Thank you so much, Ray, and thank you for that question. Excellent question. I really appreciate you. Sorry, I forgot to ask it earlier, so I'm glad that you were able to come up and ask. But with that, guys, I think this wraps up our session here and our interview. So I really, really appreciate you, Ray, for joining us. And I appreciate everyone that has tuned in and that was able to come up and ask questions or to listen. And I hope you guys were able to take this information that is extremely critical and important from Ray and to share it amongst your friends, your colleagues on different platforms, different panels, and to remember that, we are better off as the United States of America, far away from Israel, and that everything that has, recently we've been talking about, from the Iraq war to this current war, is all because of, Israel's influence on our leaders and our Congress. But I do appreciate you so much, Ray, for joining us. It's been an absolute honor to have you with us, and I hope you'll join us again here sometime soon.
Well, Taz, just let me say that the quality of the questions was superior. I go on a lot of such shows, and these people that ask me those questions know what the right ones are. And so I compliment you and your audience in letting this stuff air, and I hope that people are moved to action.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. We've had everybody that is joining and that is surrounding us here on these different platforms are just have learned, I've learned so much from them, and they have learned so much from us as well. And we have just all been able to battle the Hasbara and fight the Hasbara and the propaganda that has been, pushed on this digital war, as Israel calls it, especially with the, recent takeover of TikTok, and how Bibi Netanyahu, as well at the JNS the other day, the summit, where they said that the digital war they're losing it and that they should be winning it, specifically with TikTok as well. They mentioned it. So thank you so much, Ray. That's a really great compliment for coming. Oh, I think he got a call. Do you guys see him, or is he paused?
He's paused.
Okay. Yeah, he may have gotten a call. But W. Ray, just absolute honor to have him with us. What an amazing individual. And I really hope that you guys take all of the information that you guys that we heard here today, and share it amongst your colleagues, your family, your communities, and also take that to also fight the Hasbara. It's everything that we always present to you. You can use it as a tool, as a weapon to battle the Hasbara that is spewing all over these different digital platforms and social media platforms. But I do appreciate you guys, everyone that asked questions. Coming from a former CIA officer and analyst, that's an amazing compliment to all of you. We could not have done this without everybody here, and this platform here. This is for all of us, and I really do appreciate all of you guys. For joining. I don't know. I think he did get a call. Haram.
Yeah. If I may just say something real quick, Taz, just a reminder to everyone again that it has been 1,000 days since this genocide began in Gaza. And what I find to be just, I guess, the silver lining in all of this is when we began, we didn't think that we would end up where we are right now currently, with so much new information emerging, with so many people coming out from all walks of life, with the realization of this one true enemy, regardless of whether or not they consider themselves pro-Palestinian or not. The mask has fallen off. I just want to highlight the steadfastness of our people in Gaza through all of the suffering, through the starvation, through the weaponized starvation at that, through the direct targetings, the displacements. They're still going strong. And this is a testament to who we are as Palestinians. And I'm truly proud to be a Palestinian, especially these past 3 years. And I thank everybody who has played a role in amplifying the voices and sharing the message.
Thank you so much, Linda. Yes, absolutely. As Eucalyptus said in the chat, 1,000 days plus 78 years, or 1,000 days and 78 years, but also 75 years from October 7th. I always say before October 7th, as people continue to say on October 7th, they completely dismiss the 75 years prior to October 7th happening, and the pain and the suffering. And then, and I guarantee you, not one individual will ever be able to name a Palestinian that has been unalived for 78 years, but they'll be able to name a random individual that, from October 7th. But no Palestinian before October 7th, and no Palestinian after October 7th. And so that kind of shows the imbalance and the hypocrisy that a lot of these individuals do hold when it comes to how, and Palestinians, how they should and when they should respond. I think we got Ray. We're back.
Welcome back, Ray.
Welcome back, Ray. Good to have you with us.
Are we starting a new session?
We're starting a new session. Welcome back. Today is episode 2 of
We couldn't get enough of you. We want you to stay.
I just wanted. Yeah. Go ahead.
Say a word to Linda. I think it was Linda that talked about. She talked about Samud, the kind of resistance that is resistance on principle, and the many Palestinians, some of whom are my best friends, who show that they will continue to resist until justice is done. And I think that our mission here in the United States is to disabuse our elders. Now, it's easy for me to say our elders, very small percentage of the people, but your elders, you got to disabuse them of the fact that Muslims are terrible, or they're going to kill us and all that stuff. I was thinking while I was turned off here for some reason of what happened immediately after 9/11, when there was one group in the Defense Department that told the truth. Now, these pesky scientists, there was a Defense Science Board. They had been in existence for many years, and they looked at things scientifically, right? And so when 9/11 happened and everyone was told they hate our freedoms, they hate our democracy, they hate us, that's why these damn Muslims did this thing, this group spoke out. Let me grab, I have it happened right over here, just a second. I was using it for some other program here, coincidentally, and this is what this Defense Science Board publicly said in September 2004. Now, September 2004 is when Bush and Cheney were running for re-election, okay? And this is what this Defense Science Board said, quote, Muslims do not hate our freedoms. Rather, they hate our policies. The overwhelming majority object to what they see as one-sided support of Israel against Palestinian rights, comma, and the long-standing, even increasing support of what Muslims see collectively as tyrannies. Think about those Gulf states surrounding Iran that have all our bases or used to have all our bases in them. So, final sentence here. Quote, thus, when American public diplomacy talks about bringing democracy to Islamic countries, this is seen as no more than self-serving hypocrisy. Okay, so this business of, they hate our freedoms, they hate our liberty, they hate our culture. Well, this is the Defense Science Board, September 23, 2004, publicly stating, no, that's not the case. They hate our policies. They hate our unequivocal support for Israel and the suppression of Palestinians. This Defense Department. Okay. Oh, man, did that get a big play in the press? Well, no. It was completely omitted from the press until after the election. Okay. And after the election, the New York Times had a little piece about this statement 2 or 3 months previous. And guess what? It said, this statement said, Muslims do not hate our freedoms. They hate our policies. But they left out the next part. The next part being the overwhelming majority object to what they see as one-sided support of Israel against Palestinian rights. Now, they left it out? Oh, well, they just left it off for space, right? No. The previous sentence remained. The next sentence remained. They just took that out. So, they even eviscerated the New York Times, the statement from the Defense Science Board, which they postponed until after Bush and Cheney got reelected, and even then cut out the meat of it. So all I'm saying here is we are up against it. The media part of the Mickey Mat is the fly in the ointment. Now we have TikTok. So let's keep ticking away, folks. I'm delighted you've been listening tonight. And you just tell me to sign off when I should sign. I'm enjoying it so much I could stay forever.
We would love for you to stay forever.
Oh, I would love that. I would love that. We'll definitely we'll make sure to have you with us again here very soon. And so I am just so happy. I mean, we're very honored and so happy to have you with us. And I'm really glad that you enjoyed this. And actually, there's so many people here that still have questions that want to come up, but we'll make sure to have you join us again here maybe in the next 2-3 weeks, and then we'll be able to see where we're at. I mean, I don't know. We may be right back into war in 2-3 weeks.
Just let me say that the smart people say, my pleasure, and I'm going to say that. It's my honor. I mean, I don't know what you young people have done to me, but you all have inspired me to think, hey, look, people I talk to usually aren't so well informed, aren't so well dedicated to justice, there is hope. And so I emerge from this discussion with renewed hope that our country's going to survive for another 250 years if
Yes.
friends and make an impression on what's going on now. So thank
Oh,
you
well,
so much.
we'll leave on that. Thank you so much, Ray. What an inspiration. I mean, this is just amazing. This is the inspiration that you all have given Ray, and he also gave us that inspiration right back. So together, we the people, we do have that power to make our country great again. So thank you so much, Ray, for joining us. An honor. Have a great night.